The level design of Dark Souls 1 has been talked to death and endlessly and rightfully praised. But as someone who only worked up the confidence to try out the FromSoftware catalogue 4 months ago, I want to give my interpretation of what the level design is saying about the themes of Dark Souls. A small disclaimer, I've done my best to try and grasp the lore of Lordran, however I may be misinterpreting certain aspects. What stands out as the most striking feature of Dark Souls 1 is the verticality of the world and how this reinforces the game's themes of rigid power structure and societal decay. Firelink Shrine serves as the game's hub, and also as a neutral ground that divides the dual sections of the world. Before I played Dark Souls, I attributed it as a grotesque and dreary game whose visuals were used to discomfort players and make them feel dejected in a game filled with vicious brutality. So when I stepped into the gorgeous Darkroot Garden, I was completely mystified that the game was capable of such a serene yet ominous atmosphere. When I was confronted with the grand reveal of Anor Londo, my jaw hit the floor, and I realized I had vastly misinterpreted what I thought these games were, and once I set foot in the dazzling Crystal Cave, I understood that FromSoftware had some of the best visual artists in the industry. However, in the opposite direction of Firelink lay the most ghastly environments I had come across, some even surpassing what I thought this game was capable of. You see, the areas that I had been exposed to the most through osmosis were the Undead Asylum, Firelink Shrine, Undeadburg, Undead Parish, but basically only the Gargoyle Arena boss fight, which I assumed was part of the same area, and the infamous Blighttown. Every other region was a completely fresh experience for me when I discovered it, meaning that the horrifying Tomb of the Giants and the Depths came as a complete surprise, and were far more disturbing than what I thought the game was capable of. And when I stepped into the cosmic horror that was the Four Kings boss fight, my jaw sunk even deeper. I guess it's a symptom of me assuming how every game in the 360 generation was dreary and brown, with little if any expressive art styles. Then again, I did deliberately avoid Dark Souls for so long due to the gatekeeping of some of its more unadjusted fans. So with Dark Souls 1 surpassing my art style expectations in both ways, it had created one of the biggest contrasts between beauty and ugliness I had seen since Tears of the Kingdom. But something stood out to me about how these locations fit into the world, as the map had been constructed in a deliberately careful way that I was certain held a deeper meaning that was obscured by the lore. The world of Lordran is vertical, something virtually unheard of in video game map design. The reason why most games don't construct layered worlds has to do with how they'll look on a map screen. If the progression of the game revolves around raising and lowering your altitude, then that's difficult to communicate on a 2D map screen. And 3D maps like the ones in Metroid Prime and Jedi Fallen Order lack the detail to make the locations instantly recognizable at a glance. In fact, it's only recently with 2.5D maps like the ones in Monster Hunter Wilds that have really allowed vertical designs to get crazy. So by eschewing a map screen altogether, Dark Souls doesn't have to limit its designs to fit within the rules of a video game world. But Dark Souls uses its peculiar layout to tell a unique story within its environment. Now, of course, Dark Souls uses its world to tell a story. I'm not talking about item descriptions that you find through Discovery. When I did my playthrough of Dark Souls, I didn't stop to read any of the item descriptions, as one of my bedtime hobbies is reading video game lore entries on the wiki. But even as Lordran unfolded before my eyes, I could see that there was a story being told within that artistic design. As you ascend up the side of the mountain, the areas become more and more extravagant, beginning with the iconic lookout where Solaire resides and the glorious sun glistening through, the lush yet frightful Darkroot Garden draped in its ethereal beauty, the towering peak that is Sen's fortress, where you make your final struggle to summit the mountain you've just conquered, before ascending to the heavenly realm that is Anor Londo, an Olympian utopia nestled far above the realms of mortals. But mortal isn't the lowliest form of life in Lordran, as every area below Firelink Shrine goes from disgusting to disturbing as more and more horrific locations present themselves. The disgusting depths will often be the first revolting area that players come across, before lowering themselves into the putrid Blighttown and finally breaking through the mortal coil and descending to the literal hellscape that is Lost Izalith. A separate path pointing hellwards will eventually take you to the mortifying Tomb of the Giants, where you'll be confronted with the game's most repugnant boss, Gravelord Nito. Dark Souls is using its verticality to tell a deliberate story about how the people of Lordran literally buried the ugliest parts of their worlds to its depths, and left its higher reaching areas intact, only to eventually abandon that as well and fully separate themselves from their disfigured world and create a hollow capital bathed in purity, literally sitting atop the bones of a dead world, though this too is nothing more than an illusion by Gwendolyn. For more Dark Souls essays, here's one about the key elements of Dark Souls 1 that should actually be attributed to Metroid Prime 1, and I'll be back in 2 days.